Maddie, we did it. That fool over at Jay's Reviews played right into our hands.
James, that was all your plan.
I know, isn't it great? But while I've got you here...
What? You mean in the basement where you have been holding me captive for over a year now?
Yes, that, exactly. While I've got you here, these basement renovations aren't going to pay for themselves. I'm going to need you to step it up and start making me a lot more money.
And just how exactly do you propose I do this?
What about another timeline video? The people love those. But this time, do it big. Do it sexy. Give the people something they've never seen before.
You mean we're finally doing...
the DCAMU?
The Zeta Project?
The Zeta
the
Project?
DCAMU? You said something the people have never seen before.
Yeah, I also said sexy.
You'll get your time. Back in July of 2006, DC Comics, Warner Home Video, and Warner Bros. Animation began production on what would become known as the DC Universe Animated Original Movies, or as some may call it, a mouthful. The line was billed as a series of original animated PG-13 films written and directed by acclaimed comic book creators and animators and featuring recognizable talent. While the majority of these films had involvement from Bruce Timm in one way or another, for the most part they were all made to be obviously outside the bounds of the DC animated universe, which he had helmed from 1992 up until just a few months earlier. This meant all new character designs, different voice actors at times, and of course non-consistent continuity, even between other films in the same line. Sure, every now and then you'd have a set of movies that followed each other, like Public Enemies and Apocalypse, Crisis on Two Earths and Doom, or Dark Knight Returns Part 2 and Batman Year 1? But it wasn't until Bruce Timm stepped down from his DC duties in 2013 and was replaced by James Tucker that things really started to heat up. July that year, fans were greeted with an on-screen adaptation of the 2011 Flashpoint storyline that was used to reboot DC's comic book continuity for the New 52 line. Due to the production cycle on these films, work on Flashpoint Paradox began before the comic was even completely finished, and as a result, was not a one-to-one adaptation of the event and strayed away from the comic at times, as writer Jim Krieg explains.
The series hadn't come out yet. It was literally pages of script, of the comic script that got sent over, and then pencil drawings. Half the time I had to match the script to the pencils, which was a little bit of a puzzle. So it wasn't as big a thing. Really the job was, one, putting the jigsaw puzzle of what it was turning into together, and then, sadly, it was cutting, throwing away marvelous material in hopes that the very best of it remained.
The film ended with a post-credit sting of a boom tube opening and parademons emerging, a teaser that would be followed up in Justice League War, an adaptation of Jeff Johns' Justice League Origin, which established the Justice League's history following the events of Flashpoint. However, despite the two stories following each other in the comic books, the films were unconnected save for the post-credit scene I mentioned. As James Tucker explained on Twitter, the events of Flashpoint created the world of Justice League War, but the characters we see in that film aren't the ones that we see in the new continuity. To clear up confusion, Yojimbo of the website DCAU Resource explained his view of the situation, saying, "I thought the start of the Flashpoint Paradox was the old timeline, Flashpoint was a hyper time, and the ending created two branched timelines, Flash and Batman in the Batcave being the new version of the old timeline, and the Boom Tube / Parademons, the first scene of the new timeline that became the DTV ongoing canon," which Tucker then agreed with as the official explanation. If you think this all means that you can just skip over Flashpoint when introducing newcomers to this world though, stop thinking that. Like, seriously, why would you deprive someone of this movie? If we're being honest, I wouldn't blame you if you were thinking about skipping it. After all, the explanation as to how it fit in continuity bugged me for forever until this explanation was given. But if you skip the film, not only are you missing a fantastic story, but you also rob yourself of understanding plot points that come up later in Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. So just deal with the momentary confusion. It'll be worth it. This all being said, my goal today is to help sort out all of your confusion when watching the DCAMU or DCAMU and give you the definitive viewing order now that we've reached the release of the franchise's newest entry, Batman Hush. Yes, it's called the DCAMU.
The DC Animated Movie Universe, DCAMU. DCAMU. Is that okay? That won't get confusing at all.
Not the New 52 animated universe. In fact, it was never planned to just be New 52 stories.
Our goal is to, after we get the first few releases out, to start telling original stories set in our new universe. We aren't obliged to just do stories that have appeared in the New 52. We will be telling new original stories in the future, as well as adapting some old stories that are pre-52, just putting them in this new universe.
And it's not the Tuckerverse either. That's pompous and apparently reserved for Legion of Superheroes and Batman the Brave and the Bold. That's right, the official word is that it's the DCAMU. Confusion, I hear you ask? What confusion? Don't you just watch the movies in the order they came out? Well, if that's what you thought, then you might need a bit more help than you realize. But that's to be expected. You did want to call this the New 52 AU after all, Robert Sterling. Right off the bat, I can tell you that Justice League War, Son of Batman, and Justice League Throne of Atlantis all occur within a week or two from each other. I mean, I guess that I don't need to tell you that though, since Throne of Atlantis has it right there at the start of the movie.
This is Colonel Trevor, government liaison to the Justice League. No, we changed it last week. Justice League tested better.
Of course, this bit is a reference to the end of Justice League War, where Captain Marvel decided to name the team.
You can call us the Super 7.
Please don't call us that.
Now, this doesn't specifically mean that it's only been a week between films. For all we know, it could have been months, and it just took them some time to come up with a better name for the team. Luckily though, Heath Corson, the writer of the two Justice League films, confirmed that there was only about a week between them.
When we pick up, it's basically, I think, a week later from where War ended. It's very, very soon.
On top of all that, Throne of Atlantis includes a bonus short on its home release titled Nightwing and Robin that features Dick and Damian picking up on the Scarecrow case that Green Lantern interrupted in that movie, confirming that the events of Son of Batman already occurred, seemingly in the order these three movies were released. So here's what we're looking at so far. Looking a little bit deeper in Son of Batman, we see this screen, suggesting it takes place no later than 2013. And in Justice League War, we see a calendar marked November hanging in Barry's work office. While this seems to indicate that the three films occur in November of 2013, look at that chart one more time. The data for each individual year doesn't actually start until after the year marker. For instance, looking at the left side of the chart, 2007's data starts at the leftmost edge of the graph and runs up until the 2008 marker. Reading it this way, it seems what we're actually seeing here is an indication that we're in November of 2012. Looking at the next film released, Batman vs. Robin is said to take place just a matter of months after Damian first arrived in Son of Batman.
After all these months together, all I've taught you, you revert to the assassin your grandfather wanted you to be.
Now, this could easily be anywhere between 2 to 11 months, meaning anywhere in between January to October of 2013. But seeing as there's snow on the ground, it seems much more likely to be on the lower end of that estimation. While the film doesn't give us a concrete time gap, one of the main plot points is Bruce's relationship with Samantha Vanaver.
Alfred's the only one who could ever get me to laugh.
After 3 months together, I like to think I can too.
A relationship that we later come to find out was actually a plot being hatched by the Court of Owls. Due to the court being hinted at in the Nightwing and Robin short that I mentioned earlier, it seems likely that this line is meant to indicate it's been 3 or so months since Throne of Atlantis, which we've already locked into November of 2012, thus placing Batman vs. Robin in February or March of 2013. The next movie in this series was Batman Bad Blood, which is a bit more loose with its potential spot on the timeline. The earliest clue we get is that Dick and Corey haven't seen each other in weeks.
It's been weeks, Dick. I've almost forgotten what you feel like.
I'll remind you.
While we haven't seen Corey up to this point, we did get to eavesdrop on Dick making plans with her back in Batman vs. Robin.
You're wearing what? The red one? With the lace? And the thong?
So, we're at least 2 weeks after that film. A little later on, however, we're told that the Heretic has been making allegiances in Gotham over the past 10 months.
In the last 10 months, he has quietly forged some dangerous alliances.
While this makes it possible for a more significant gap between films, we learn later on that the Heretic was actually a clone of Damian created by Ra's al Ghul that Damian was unaware of. Ra's having died in Son of Batman closes the gap down to be up to 10 months after that that film, and thus up to 7 months after Batman vs. Robin. Is it Ra's? I forget if it's Ra's or Ra's in this continuity. However, it's still likely that the Heretic was in Gotham long before then. Personally, I'm inclined to believe that Bad Blood happens pretty soon after Batman vs. Robin. After all, the way Batman and Batwoman speak to each other, it seems very likely that she's new to the vigilante crime fighting scene.
I could have handled these C-listers on my own.
Dressing like a bat doesn't make you a hero, it just makes you a target.
And yet, in Batman vs. Robin, when the Court of Owls drugged Bruce, Batwoman was clearly visible in his vision. Regardless, with things being a bit less than conclusive here, the gap is pretty open to be between March to September of 2013. I'm just personally leaning more towards the earlier side of things. The following film, Justice League vs. Teen Titans, seemingly jumps us forward a few years as we see Damian join the Teen Titans. We know it's been a couple years because the production crew was kind enough to actually give us information on Damian's age in multiple movies. In Batman vs. Robin, Dick tells us
he's a 10-year-old boy.
And in Bad Blood, we got this bit of info from Talia.
I have thought of little else for the last 12 years.
Which all but implies Damian is 11. You know, since Talia is his mother and pregnancies are usually a 9-month term, and 11 years plus 9 months is almost 12 years. It's just math. So, if Damian turned 11 by the time Bad Blood occurs in 2013, that means in order to gel with the teen part of Teen Titans, we're at least in 2015, when Damian would have been 13 years old. This earliest date is also backed up by Teen Titans The Judas Contract. We know that Judas Contract is set a year after the events of Justice League vs. Teen Titans because it's Tara's 1-year anniversary with the team.
Are those for me?
They sure are. For your 1-year anniversary as a member of the Titans.
While Tara wasn't a main character in Justice League vs. the Teen Titans, we see her heading towards Titans Tower in a mid-credits scene from that film, confirming that this is when she joined them. On top of this 1-year gap, the Judas Contract also gives us a newspaper article from 2016, confirming that this film happens no earlier than that year. While this gives us an earliest date, it doesn't completely lock these films in these years. However, Judas Contract actually opens with a scene set 5 years earlier, in which Dick has yet to become Nightwing and is still operating under the Robin moniker. At the very least, this confirms Judas Contract occurs before November of 2017 and Justice League vs. Teen Titans before November of 2016. But if you look at Dick as Robin side by side with him as Nightwing and Son of Batman, then it seems pretty clear some time has passed between the two, leading me to believe the 2015-2016 placement for the two films to be the most accurate. Interestingly enough though, this does create a small continuity issue. In the DCAMU, it seems as though the Teen Titans were a group before the Justice League. In and of itself, this isn't a problem, but it does get weird when you take into consideration Batman and Flash meeting each other in Justice League War.
It is a real honor to meet you, Sir Batman. Sir Batman, sir.
Don't bother, the guy's a total tool.
I followed your efforts in Central City, Flash. You do tight, efficient work.
I suppose we could assume that Batman was using intel from Robin to keep up with the Flash's adventures in Central City, but it's just weird to think that he would be far enough removed from Batman that Barry wouldn't realize his sidekick and Batman's sidekick are on a team together. But I digress. Moving back towards the viewing order aspect of things, currently this is what we're looking at. From here, things get a little sticky, so I'm gonna hop around a little bit. I'm sure you'll notice I already skipped Justice League Dark, and there's a good reason for that.
Pudding night is Thursday.
Despite having come out between the Teen Titans films, Justice League Dark happens out of sequence. Towards the end of that film, we witness the death of Jason Blood as he's separated from Etrigan, and yet he's alive in the comic sequel to Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, which came out the following year in 2018. So events seemingly go in the order of Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, the 12-issue sequel comic, and then Justice League Dark. But just when do they happen? Well, for that, let's look over at Constantine City of Demons. Similarly to Vixen and Freedom Fighters The Ray, this film was originally released as a set of animated shorts on CW Seed before being stitched together with extra content as a full film. Due to this similar treatment, as well as having Matt Ryan reprise the role of Constantine from the live-action NBC show, many initially thought City of Demons was part of the Arrowverse. Clearing up the matter, writer J.M. DeMatteis confirmed on Twitter that the film was in the same universe as Justice League Dark. However, there seems to be some disagreement on the production team as to whether it's a prequel or sequel. When asked if the film would be considered a sequel to Justice League Dark, producer Butch Lukic stated,
"No, it's a prequel. It's actually more his origin story of why he became the Constantine that we know from Dark and anything else."
But when asked a similar question on Twitter, DeMatteis suggested it took place after Dark, hinting that it had actually been a couple years since the events of that film. Since DeMatteis wrote the script for both of the films, it seems as though he may have the better grasp on the timeline of them all, and perhaps we can just chalk up Butch Lukic's comments to being about Constantine's backstory given within the film. That being said, City of Demons gives us another on-screen date via a newspaper dated October 30th, 2018. So, following DeMatteis' comments about how much time passed between films, this would place Justice League Dark in 2016 at the latest, with Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, as well as the film's sequel comic, happening a non-distinct amount of time beforehand. I know, not the most satisfying outcome, but there isn't much available to lock down these three entries. So, Hell to Pay, its tie-in comic, and Justice League Dark are floating around in some nebulous time prior to the end of 2016, with City of Demons taking place in late 2018. As for the viewing order aspect, you could seemingly watch Hell to Pay and Justice League Dark in a couple different variations. You could do them after the Titans films, or alternate between Titans films and these two films, or even watch both of these in between the Titans films as a way to give yourself a breather to signify that year gap. Now, this brings us to the Death of Superman and Reign of the Supermen. Luckily, these ones are a bit easier to figure out. In Reign of the Supermen, we get 5 different newspapers, all of which are dated 2018. In addition to this, at the very start of the film,
it's been 6 months since Doomsday, and the world is still shaken by the death of Kal-El of Krypton.
Which then places that film in either 2017 or 2018. Once again, this may be a bit loose, but Death of Superman does give us a scene in which the League discusses the end of their fiscal year.
Okay, next up, the operating budget for the upcoming fiscal year.
Typically speaking, a company can set their own fiscal years, but they all end in the last day of March, June, September, or December. Knowing what we do about when the League was founded in November of 2012, it would make the most sense that their fiscal year would then end in September, as to account for the closest they could for a full year without going over during their first year of operations. This isn't necessarily a rule, but it makes sense to me, especially when you take into consideration that the next closest date would be December, and the film's weather doesn't seem to reflect that time of year. As well as if it were June, then Reign of the Supermen would be in December, and once again, the weather we see in the film doesn't reflect that. So, September seems to be the most likely candidate, placing Death of Superman in September of 2017, with Reign of the Supermen taking place in March of 2018. Alongside the release of Death of Superman, a tie-in comic of the same name was released. The first 8 issues all take place during the film itself, adding an additional story that we didn't see play out on screen, with issues 9 through 12 taking place in between Death and Reign. So, if you want to add this to your marathon, my suggestion would be between films. Of course, if your marathon happens after October 1st, 2019, and you're watching the deluxe Death and Return of Superman films that combine both of these with additional footage, then pause the movie and read it where it feels right to you. Now we're caught up to present day. Batman Hush is out, Teen Titans Go vs. Teen Titans seems to have a guest appearance from the DCAMU Titans, and Wonder Woman Bloodlines is being hinted to have a 5-year jump sometime within the film. While I can't say much for the 2 films that have yet to be released, I can help place Batman Hush for you. But before doing so, let's do a full recap. Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox comes first, but on a separate timeline. Then in November of 2012, we have Justice League War, Son of Batman, Justice League Throne of Atlantis, and the Nightwing and Robin short all back to back in the span of roughly a week or so. Batman vs. Robin takes place in early 2013, sometime around February to March, with Batman Bad Blood following sometime later in the year. 2015 brings us to Justice League vs. Teen Titans, with Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, the 12-issue tie-in comic, and Justice League Dark taking place sometime between then and the end of 2016. A year after Tara joins the Titans, we're met with Teen Titans The Judas Contract in 2016. 2016, then Death of Superman in late 2017, Reign of the Superman in early 2018, and Constantine City of Demons in October 2018. Luckily, Batman Hush is super easy to pin down. Since the film brings Bruce Wayne to Metropolis, there are multiple references to death and reign, whether it be Lois now being aware of Superman's secret identity,
just super type it like you do when you think I'm not watching,
or Lex now being a member of the Justice League and having fought Cyborg Superman.
I saved all your asses against Cyborg Superman. And I'll remind you, I'm a Justice League member now.
Probationary member.
In fact, they were even nice enough to give us another on-screen date. I won't spoil too much about this movie, but there was a scene where Thomas Elliot has to perform surgery on Bruce, which results in the newspaper headline, "Notorious Playboy Saved by Surgeon Friend," dated November 2016? That can't be right. That would mean this movie takes place 2 years before Reign of the Supermen. But it has to be afterwards. James, get in here!
Huh? What's going on? What is it?
Have you seen this? The newspaper in Hush, it just doesn't make any sense.
What am I supposed to do about it? Why don't you try something smart, like contacting someone who actually worked on the movie? Oh, and while you're at it, ask if that Sergeant Rock short that was on the Blu-ray is also part of this timeline.
You know, you're right. This is a good idea. Let me see what I can figure out. Hey, Mr. Tucker, what's up with this newspaper? Also, is Sergeant Rock canon? Love your work. XOXO. And send. So anyway... Well, that was fast.
Well, what does it say?
Oh, no. Well, the good news is we don't have to worry about Sergeant Rock.
And the bad news?
He says that the newspaper was a goof and that they try not to put a date on anything.
But you found dates on a lot of things.
I know. I don't know how to explain it. Is continuity a lie? Does the timeline not matter? Is what the hell is happening to you?
What is this? Maddie, help me!
I can't. This desk is too close to the wall. I can't squeeze out.
I still have to destroy James Review's career.
It's everywhere. James!
It is March 2018. The weather calls for rain. It is September 2017. The Superman exists, he is American, he dies. It is June 2018. Look around you. You're all alone. The pieces don't fit. It is December 2019. Nothing ends. Nothing ever ends. It is 50 years from now. Whenever now is. Do I destroy everything? I do not see tomorrow.